Ladies and gentlemen, my interview with Aaron Franklin.
I like the mustache. Is that new or is that
I picked it up last night at mustaches.com.
nice? That's awesome.
How about that for a smart aleck comment? No, I was in Portland last week doing some stuff, and like a big old dork, I thought I would celebrate Ned Flanders.
Excellent, excellent. And also too, it's very Portland of you. If you had grown it out a little bit longer, it would be like,
Well, if I had more than about a week's worth of growth on this thing,
yeah.
no, it's about 2 weeks, I guess. But yeah, it's kind of starting to get on my nerves. I got a really short haircut yesterday, and now it looks really funny. I got my summer haircut.
I know, and it's funny too how I do like just like animals. I do get my hair cut as short as possible during the summer because
Heck yeah,
it
man, it's
gets
hot.
so hot. I wanted to thank you because I don't know if a lot of people thank you, but thank you for what you've done for the barbecue industry in the world. Like, because there is a definite shift from 2009 to prior and before. Like, there was great barbecue then, but a different type of barbecue, and things changed. So I just wanted to. I don't know if anybody ever thanks you, so thank you for what
Well,
you.
thank you very much. That makes me feel good.
Yeah, that was my only intention is to make you feel good. No, it was just but also too, I wanted to. I don't know if a lot of people know. I don't share a lot of my history on the show or in general. Is that we do share something in common? Is that we both work for John Miller, and
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. Was he
we.
nice to you?
I don't. It's like I haven't. Part of the time there were times where he was nice. It was more we talked a little bit when you came out to Los Angeles for that one time
Mhm.
LA barbecue festival, and it was definitely and we both chopped onions for him. I kind of he was very he was what I want to tell you something that's really uncomfortable is that when I got off the plane I was getting at a divorce at the time, so I got off the plane. We were friends on Twitter. I got off the plane to work for him and help him open up the place on East First, and
The
I got
trailer?
the trailers, the place
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
That became La Barbecue after they got rid of him, and I came and I hugged him because I'm a huggy person, and
He's like, ah.
he turned into like stone, like he was like, and I thought, oh, I've made a big mistake, and I lived in his. He was married to this woman Debbie and Taylor at the time at
Mhm.
her child's bedroom, and they had trophies on the wall, like a little kid's bedroom. And I wake up at 3 in the morning, drive him into to Austin, and then it was the most bizarre experience. But can you
That
talk
is
a little?
super weird.
Because your parents had a Ben's barbecue, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They did in Bryan, Texas. And they only had it for a couple years. They caught the memo really quickly that it was not a good way to make a living and it was way too hard.
But did you work at that restaurant with
I
them?
did. I did. Yeah, that was kind of I don't want to say it was my first job, but it was adjacent to my first job. My grandparents owned a record store,
Oh,
and I really grew up there, like playing records, and they would do in stores and back in the 80s and stuff. And I would be sitting, little kid, sitting at the end of the counter, like playing records, and I started to help people and started to work the floor and stuff like that. I was probably about 10 or 11, I guess. But my parents, when they had that barbecue place, I think I was probably about 11 or 12, somewhere in there.
okay. But when you worked there, did you have any inkling at all that you'd go into barbecue again? Was that something?
No, no, good lordy, no.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about it at all. But I did really, really love working there. I mean, I'm kind of like that. I'm also an only child, so I had very little
Okay.
going on in my life. And, super nerdy, really just like to just do hobbies and build stuff. And I thought the barbecue thing was really cool. I never got to really cook anything, but I worked the lunches. I worked the flat top as a 12-year-old during lunch. They were
Oh,
only open for lunch. And they did like Texas toast and I did the butter stuff and I scooped sides, I did all that, and I prepped onions and pretty much the same thing I was doing for John Miller, I was doing when I was 12 at another barbecue place.
but so the reason why you got the job,
I really went a long way.
yeah, but also was that a place like a chopped beef sandwich type place, or is that what
They
style it
did,
was, or?
yeah, kind of. It was sort of like more East Texas style. So, and I don't know where the Texas toast thing came from. I think maybe it's an East Texas thing. I'm not real sure.
Yeah, I
Maybe
don't
it was
either.
just a Brian thing. I have no idea. They had purchased this restaurant from another guy, also named Ben, different last name though. And so that seemed like it was meant to be. But yeah, they did the Texas toast, they cooked brisket, And I remember loving it, but I also remember, I would open up little packets of salt and pepper, put them in a plate, and I would take this lean, lean, lean brisket. I mean, this is like early 80s style, like scrape the fat off, turn it, fat side down, paper thin slices because it was really, really tough. And I would like smush it into the salt and pepper. And, of course, no one in my family was like, hey, might be unhealthy to eat that much salt. But I loved it. And then years later, when I, bought a barbecue pit, I called up my dad. I was like, "Hey, how do I cook a brisket? I want to make a brisket." It's like, "Oh, just throw it on and cook it till it's black. It's probably good." I'm like, "Okay, well, do I season it?" It's like, "Oh, we never did at the restaurant." It's like, "Oh my God."
Wow.
Well, that's probably why I really like smush into the salt and pepper. But yeah, anyway, so they did chopped beef, yes, and they had a really cool barbecue sauce. It was a family recipe from a different family, and it was this really twangy East Texasy barbecue sauce, and it was kind of when I got a job at John Miller's place, that super thin one, which is a spinoff of the Taylor, the family spot,
Yeah.
that had like the chunks of onions and all that stuff in there. It reminded me a little bit of what my parents made at their
Oh,
place. I
interesting.
had this, and I've been trying to replicate this recipe for years. I can't even come close, even though I feel like I 100% remember the recipe because I made the sauce. And yeah, it had like, Coca-Cola, it had the lemon and onions, 24 of each, quartered and halved, and then cooked down into a stock, and then ketchup and brown sugar and all this stuff on top of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it had a pretty unique sauce. Brisket, they did pork ribs, full spares. They were not tender. They were just like old school, slice them with a cleaver and tug at them for a while. Um, yes, chopped beef, hence the sauce. And gosh, what else was on there? Oh, they did sliced pork butts. Because in Texas, before pulled pork happened,
That's
some
true.
guy started cooking pulled pork. And in Texas they would undercook the pork to about 165, thanks USDA, and slice it real thin. And it was not that great. But that's what they did. And then, beans, potato salad, coleslaw, and the other thing that was unique, and this is a very East Texas thing, rib sandwiches. Two pieces of bread with spare ribs and sauce and pickles and onions.
And then people would just tear it apart and
They
kind
would
of
just
make it their.
take it apart and eat them like ribs.
I think I've seen like as a joke, but I've also seen people do the rib sandwich, and I've often wondered like, do they pull the bones out or do they keep it like I just don't know.
Only McDonald's pulls the bones out
Yeah, but
and grind them up and
the
grind
bones.
them
You think
whole.
there's even
Yeah, I've been trying to replicate the McRib for a long time with like a rib mold.
Yeah, that
Pretty
would be.
good actually.
I've thought about that too. Yeah, making my own rib bowl. That would be interesting because
Yeah.
I would love to. Like that would be a nice thing to go to their plant, and but they would highly. I'm sure they would never let anyone in to see how that's done. But
Oh, no, no, no. You don't want to know what's in the McRib.
no. So then, but then, was your path? Did you think? Because I'm gonna gotta go all over the place. But did you think that you were gonna go into something like engineering or something that was because you're
Yeah,
tinkering, you like to do that.
yeah, I did. And if I had really had my druthers and had the resources to go to school and do all these things that I really wanted to do, um, the three areas of interest that I had as a child and all throughout high school and stuff like that, and I quickly realized I was not a was not eligible. Is electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and architecture. Those are three
Mhm.
things that I really, really get into, and that now I kind of have like the coolest job ever because I get to do all of those things with no college debt.
That's true. There's something amazing about creating something from a piece of paper to the actual
Oh my God,
physical.
it's amazing. I mean, it's like a building, version of cooking. It's the
Mhm.
same thing.
You talk about too, you talk about base and talk about your the parties that you would have in your
Mhm.
backyard. The first write-up was in the Sentinel, right? The Big Ben Sentinel, which was
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
so random that I didn't realize that was one of the first write-ups that you guys had.
Yeah, and I
So
think that was, golly, when that would have been like,
2004, I think is what I wrote.
yeah, yeah, that probably sounds about right.
Did so this was something too, like you talked about you because you were cheap. Is this so
Well, cheap and also did not have any money.
so that's yeah,
I
that's a
mean,
nice
Stacy
what a
rolls her
combination.
eyes all the time when I say this. And I feel very confident remembering this accurately, you know. But when we opened the barbecue trailer in '09, if that first check had cleared a day earlier than I hoped it wouldn't, um, or would, we would have had 28 cents in the bank on opening day. That's cutting
Really?
it pretty close. We were extremely frugal.
28 cents. Wow. So at the beginning, were you getting prime meat? Were you getting
No, no, good
yeah.
lordy, no. It took a while to get there. When we first started, because we only had 28 cents in the bank,
Yeah, that's what I'm
and we
saying.
actually opened the barbecue trailer. Stacy had gotten in a little fender bender, and we got a small insurance check. And instead of fixing her car, we used that money to buy the meats and to go ahead and open up the trailer. We've been working on this trailer in the backyard for a while, and everything. Our friends were really supportive and trying to help us and get this thing going and stuff. Um, from the backyard
Yeah.
barbecues and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so when we opened, since we had no money, I was going to Restaurant Depot and just buying, two briskets every day, three briskets on the weekends and stuff like that. And I was doing the Superior Angus. And it was, gosh, I want to say it was like 97 cents a pound,
Okay.
something like that. Who knows what it is now? I'm sure it's like $5
Oh
plus.
yeah.
That stuff is so expensive. And then the idea was always to do hardcore all natural. And I didn't really know anything about grass fed or what the differences really were, but I knew that I wanted to be like hardcore all natural, like that, like no growth hormones allowed. And as soon as we sold enough per day, as soon as I could get to one case of meat, which then was six briskets in a case, um, I started ordering Myers All Natural from a meat purveyor here in town, and they would deliver every morning. That's because I had one space and a little refrigerator that I could just slide that case of meat in. And every morning, about 5, 6 a.m., the guy would show up, bring one little dinky case, and did that for a while. And then when we moved into the restaurant, they were struggling to keep up at that point because we were cooking so many briskets. And then, it seemed like it was the most we had ever cooked for sure. But I think when we moved into the building, almost exactly, well, it was a year and 3 months after we opened the trailer, went from two briskets a day. I think we were doing 28 or 24 briskets a day when we moved into the building. And
Okay.
that was two 500-gallon cookers. And then I bought another little one off of some guy to cook ribs on so I could double up on ribs. And that held 9 racks of ribs. So that's what we cooked. Um, but then, so anyway, so Myers All Natural was having a hard time getting the briskets. So then I started looking around and, it's the early days of the internet. And I kind of got on some websites. It's like, oh, Nyman Ranch is great stuff. Went to the local Wheatsville Co-op, kind of the local, like, hippie grocery store, which I love that place for sure. But they sold Nyman Ranch. So then that got me down a path. They couldn't make enough briskets. And then I cold called Creekstone. And we'd gone through a few different things, at that point, but we were definitely hardcore all natural. And then it must have been, well, it was right after we opened in the restaurant. So I guess, summer of 11, probably. I just randomly, somebody told me about Creekstone. I looked them up and I called the 1-800 number that was on their website, or it would have been a 1-800 number, I guess. It wasn't too smoky of a voice on the other end. Um, and
You called the wrong number.
yeah, oops. Uh, yeah, so I cold called them, and I was like, "Hey, my name's Aaron. I work at a restaurant in Austin, Texas. We want to get some brisket." And they called me back, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're Aaron Franklin." I was like, "Yeah." And then I've been working with him for years, ever since, and we've kind of built up the herds and done all that stuff. But yeah, we didn't start off with all natural, but we got there as soon as possible.
But how
Man,
did you oh
I
go on.
did. So sorry.
How did you know the restaurant was right for that? Did was because the elevator wasn't there, right? Or the elevator-ish.
No, no, no. We didn't build that till 14.
So how did like what about the restaurant made sense to you when was it the land like how much property it
Oh,
was
like
there?
how we ended up with the space?
Yeah, how do you end up with that space? I've always been curious.
I've been stalking it for years. When I first moved to Austin in the 90s, it was called Ben's Long Branch. And of course, I noticed it because I lived over here. And also, I grew up in a restaurant that was called Ben's Barbecue. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, Ben's Barbecue, Long Branch. And I thought that was kind of cool. And I would come in here and get chopped beef sandwiches and banana pudding and stuff like that. So I knew the spot. And I always thought it was really, really cool and just like an old school, barbecue joint, and even though they used ovens, that was, you can't win them all.
Yeah.
But it had been struggling for years, and Ben Wash, the guy that had run that place since 1981, he actually opened up in a different location, but he moved over here shortly after. But Ben's Long Branch had existed since 1981, and he was getting older, and he would retire, and I would notice these banners on the building like Ben's back, and then it would, 3 months later, it would have a different sign, like you know whoever's barbecue spot or whatever. And it was obvious that it was struggling. And we were in the trailer at this point, and we lived on the same road, just way further east over here. And I would drive by, all crazy hours of the day because I was getting to work at 3:30 then and getting home at midnight and doing that thing. So I would kind of cruise by and be like, nobody's cooking over there. Looks like, maybe this place might be coming available pretty soon. And I thought it was perfect because it was already a well-established barbecue place, which meant to me that it had the equipment that we might need. Turns out it did not. It was all broken. And but we already had most of that stuff anyway, I guess the one warming cabinet. So got a real estate friend, a commercial real estate friend, to get a hold of the owner. He called him. He's like, "Hey, got, a friend that's in a barbecue trailer. They're really busy. They're looking for a brick and mortar building." And the guy was like, "Well, somebody's in there right now. I'll give you a call if they ever leave." And then a couple of weeks later, maybe like a month later or something, he calls up. He's like, "Well, looks like they're gone." And they just, like when we looked at the spot there, it was so sad. There was no power. All the services had been disconnected. I'm assuming for non-payment. And
Probably.
raw chicken was in the fridges. Like
Oh,
it was, my God, it was so gross. It was the one of the most disgusting things I've ever witnessed. And like all the water was still connected, darn, because all the drains were clogged and all the faucets dripped. So the floor was just soaking wet. It's on a slab. It was a wreck, but when we walked in, it was the really sad part was that you could just tell how defeated whoever was working there was, because there were bits of meat left on the cutting board, and the knife was just set down, and the apron was hanging by the light switch by the front door.
oh,
Like,
that would.
you know what? The hell with this. And it was so sad. So Stacy and I are like, "Oh man, this place is real big POS. It's perfect."
Exactly.
Because it was also really inexpensive.
But
And I
also
think
too, like it would. Oh, go on. I can just picture that in my mind. That would be an awesome photo too to have seen. What
oh yeah. I mean, it was like a
it's like
cartoon.
trapped in time almost.
It really was, but I think the guy had only been gone for, I don't know, a week or two.
Oh my God.
But anyway, so we signed a lease with this place, and worked on it for 3 months. So it was perfect in the way that it was super affordable. I think our rent was $3,200 in the beginning, and then by the time we bought it, I think it was only up to like 4,500. So it was super duper, kind of my rule of thumb is like, well, if we can pay rent in one day's worth of sales, we got this. We're
Yeah.
going to be okay. And well, that's not what we were doing out of the trailer. Trailer, we were pretty maxed out at about $1,200 a day, maybe $1,000 a day. But when we moved into the building, our sales went up to about $3,200 a day, $3,500 a day. And I was like, okay, this is going to work. So, the building was not great, needed a lot of repairs. I'm really good at building stuff. It took us 3 months to work on it. And I would leave the trailer. I would drive over here. I would work until about an hour before I had to go cook ribs the next day at the trailer, go home, shower, change clothes, go cook ribs. And I did that every day for 3 months.
Wow.
And I built this place mostly between the hours of like 7 p.m. and 2 a.m.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, for 3 months. And a couple friends helped. But I think, man, details are fuzzy because I wasn't sleeping much. Um, but I feel like I probably did about 90% of the work myself.
And that helps so
Jack,
much.
jacked up the roof, built the walls, did all the stuff. Um, and then we opened on the first day of South by Southwest in 2011.
Oh wow. And they talked about too in the tour, and I'll put a link to the tour below. And actually that
By the
tour,
way,
but
I want to tangent. That video that we did, for you. Last week, somebody was like, "Oh yeah, like I've watched this video, and like your office is like under the deck, and like I'm in there." I'm like, "No, no, 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 no! I was just playing around. That's where the
I,
cream trap is."
I love that. No, it's so funny. And I tried to cut it so that it looked like you really were. So
Oh
that's
yeah,
funny
yeah,
to
totally.
actually, because I'm not the best editor, but it was, and it also too, like how you had like, there's people that have written in the comments or written me and said, oh, he talked about Judas Priest here, or he talked about something here, like these references that you made, because you tried to make a lot of, but you talked about on the tour that you built like the cutting surface, cutting area, you built it to work for your
Oh
body type.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, the angle on the front of the counter is from the tip of my shoe to my waist because I didn't want to bump my shoes on it, but I wanted it to be canted and I wanted it to, a curve on a curve is kind of hard to build, so that was fun.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I just made it up as I went. I didn't really have I just had a general idea. And I remember building that little short pony wall. And there were a lot of beer cans inside that wall, by the way. It was cold outside, and I was drinking a lot of Buried Hatchet from gosh, Southern, where are they from? So anyway, a brewery out in
Yeah.
Conroe, Texas. Um, but yeah, I remember like building that little pony wall and thinking to myself, I sure hope the line gets outside the front door so it looks like we're at least open.
Yeah. And how long did that take? Do you remember it all? Like, do you remember these little bits of? I'm sorry to like be pulling these little, random things from your brain, but do you
No,
remember
it's
those
fun for
first
me.
days? Do you remember those first days? Because a lot of people don't know about this stuff, and I don't know. Like, what were
Yeah,
those
well,
first
these
days
are the
like?
details that only I know. Like I
Yeah.
literally know where the beer cans are in the building.
So if you ever sell
I'm
it, those beer cans.
Yeah, I'm the weird guy. They'd be like, "Ooh, no, no, no! Don't drill a hole there. There's a water line on that wall." Like I know all that stuff. Um, yeah, I mean, it didn't like how long it took to get a line out the door.
Yeah, or just kind of yeah.
Yeah.
How long like
So
before?
people camped out overnight the first day we were open in the trailer. The city was rooting for us so hard. It
Oh,
was
that's
so
so
kind. It
great.
was so sweet. I've never, and that's why we live in Austin. People are just so nice and so kind. And, it was a bunch of people that used to eat at the trailer that were from the neighborhood. But I remember showing up and I was so nervous that first day. Like, South by Southwest, things were crazy around town. Those were kind of
It's
the
wild.
years where you had like the Doritos stage and just corporate spending was through the
It
roof
was a
and
wild time. Yeah, I
vacations
remember.
everywhere. It was crazy. Um, and I remember getting here the first night, and I think I probably showed up a little early because I was nervous about it, just cooking in a different place, and we hadn't done it before. And there were already people in tents, in sleeping bags on the ramp, and then going down, and
Wow.
people sleeping on the picnic tables on the front patio and stuff. And I remember I pulled up, and people were out there, and they were like, "Yeah!" They were like cheering for me, and I went and talked to them for a minute. I was like, I gotta go cook ribs. And I don't remember how the food turned out that day. I think it was probably pretty okay. Um, but man, it was
Wow.
totally crazy because the line was halfway down the parking lot, and we had never really learned. We didn't really need to until that point how to like cut off the line before we open,
Yeah.
and that just threw a whole nother situation into the mix.
Yeah, you had to create that sort of methodology
Yeah, we
to
had to build all the systems. I mean, two people that have never run a crazy busy barbecue restaurant before got to
yeah.
figure it out.
That is wild. And it's also it's interesting because were you the first, and I hate to say first, but were you creating platters that were beautiful back in the trailer? Like was that
Mhm.
something
Yeah,
aesthetically you wanted
that's
to
a
do?
very aesthetic thing for me. Yeah, I was really, and if you look at like the way
So
that I build a platter, like, it's almost like if you're looking at like a golden ratio, like I always like I love curves and lines, and again back to architecture
yeah.
and design and stuff like that. But it was very intentional that our trays look a certain way, like fatty on the back, lean up front, tapers out. You want about a quarter inch of reveal just to show the fat, like all the stuff, but not too much where it dries out. And then, turkey and then pulled pork goes on the side to keep the side moist. And then ribs go. So if you've got an angle going like this, you want your ribs to be at a complementary angle, feathered out, of course. And then turkey goes in the middle because you can swipe the top with the turkey butter to keep it looking good until it gets to the table. And then sausage fills out the front.
Wow. That's it. That's
Yeah,
interesting. That's cool to
very.
hear.
I I swear I've probably thought of everything about this
Well,
place.
and I've become like hyper focused on platters and or trays, whatever one you want to call it, across the country because that's something that visually I'm a visual person and I love seeing what people do, and you can see when people just kind of like I bet
Just
people
put
yeah
on.
just throw it all there, and there's people that are very methodical about it, and I love that. I love that kind of aesthetics, and you could with the different colors and the pickles and the different. Were you pickling your onions at the time too?
No, we don't pickle onions at all. We go through
Oh
way too.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, just old school. Yeah.
We do probably about 100 pounds of onions a day.
Who's that person? That's I
His
remember.
name is Robo.
Oh, the rope. Oh, that's so sweet. I wish that. But you know what's funny too is like the first time I cut onions for John, he got so mad at me because number one, I came from California. I never knew how to cut a brisket. I never knew how to do any of the, and I never knew how it was presented. I didn't never had been to Louis Miller. I never knew that you slice it like for rings, and it was just it's just
Well, in the way that they cut brisket, in the way it's the same way we cut brisket too. Maybe we're a little like more nuanced on like kind of curves and I think of it as like skating a pool. But like that style where you break off the flat and the point, and then cut it in half, that is totally a Louis Miller thing.
yeah,
Like I don't know anyone else that did it like that back in the day.
and that's interesting. That's a Bobby thing.
Or Fred, I don't know.
Oh, probably Fred. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, and that's funny too. Like I
I mean,
remember
that's
hearing.
getting way, way, way back there in the history
Yeah,
of
Fred Fontaine, like a lot of
barbecue.
people don't even know, and I'm glad you brought his name up because a lot of people don't talk about him. It's just
Well,
it's kind of
and
gone
he
the wayside.
also kind of started the brown butcher paper thing.
Hmm.
Like it all roads kind of lead back to them.
And it's interesting, and I love too, like the family trees and like how things because there's people that don't talk about too that work for you that have gone off to
Mhm.
better butchers, and they never mentioned the fact that oh yeah, I worked for Franklin, and it's for who
But a
knows
lot
what.
of people have mentioned that they worked here when they really didn't work here.
Oh, has that
That's
happened too?
totally become a thing. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I worked there. I worked at Franklin, and no one knew that I worked for you for what 6 months? Just
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
cutting onions. No, actually, I was put inserting into drywall cans, beer cans.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to talk about Stacy too. Can you talk about Stacy? And then the next person I want to talk about is Jordan McKay. I'd like you to kind of
Yeah.
talk about.
Two of my favorite people. Well, Stacy is my wife and business partner,
Yeah.
and this is probably extremely obvious to anyone, but she's really the only reason why Franklin Barbecue exists. Like, I just make things and create more problems for us both. But she's really the rock that keeps this place going. Like, people don't really give her the credit that she deserves because she is kind of more off in she's kind of like the back behind the curtains back
Mhm.
there. Um, but yeah, I mean, she runs everything. If it wasn't for her, I don't think I don't think I ever would have gotten open. But I don't think without her support, I ever would have thought that it was possible. And then after we opened, I don't think we would have lasted more than a week or two if it wasn't for Stacey being like, "Whoa, we got to fix this. Hey, you need to do better at this. Hey, I'm gonna go figure out how to do this while you're doing that." I think the split of like responsibility is probably I think it's been pretty even over the years, but all the stuff that really like I'm just kind of like the guy that, you know, hangs out and quality and food and more chefy kind of things like that. And also I'm the maintenance guy. Um, but Stacy she runs the office, she does the numbers, she takes care of all the actual important stuff. I mean, I bet you if it was up to me, um I don't know that I would have known to pay sales tax.
And you'd be in trouble. The
And
comptroller.
it would not have gone well.
Yeah, and I've heard too. Like this is the off thing. I've heard that like if people don't pay their sales tax, that a sheriff will come and stand and collect money. Has that?
Hmm.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that?
yeah. I worked at a barbecue place that shall remain nameless. You can probably guess. That happened to twice when I worked there. That a constable or sheriff came in and seized funds
As
and
they were
locked
being,
doors.
as like people were paying. Yeah, it's interesting. That's as well.
No,
But
well, like at the end of lunch, they would
oh, is
just
that?
walk in, and you'd have a constable lock the doors, and then the other constable or sheriff or whoever would walk up and be like, "Give me the money,"
Oh, that's how it works. Okay, yeah.
and
I
they
was
would
always
just
wondering.
clear out the register and tip jars too.
Okay, this person might have mentioned maybe the same person might have mentioned that story. Okay, so maybe that's why it's in the back of my mind. I've always
Yeah,
thought about it because I ended
I
up
was just cutting onions in the back.
say with Same with me. I was cutting onions, I was making a potato salad that would get thrown out sometimes because I put too much salt in it. And 86. But yeah, because Stacy's always been my contact when I've wanted to talk
Mhm.
about stuff with you guys, and
Well,
that's
she
why
knows everything
I love
except
talking.
where the water line is in that wall.
She doesn't know. And are you in your trailer right now? The
I
original
am.
trailer? Okay, just
Yeah,
so
that's
people know.
under the deck.
That's under the deck. Yeah, you had to crawl the crawl space with you need to whistle to get into, like it
Uh-huh.
opens the door. And then Jordan McKay. When did you connect with him? And what I forget when the first book came out, but
We wrote the first book in 14,
14. Okay.
and this guy David Hill Smith
Oh,
is a literary agent guy, and kind of he had done Daniel Vaughn's book and stuff like that. I had met him in the early days of us being in the building, and he's like, "Hey, live in Dallas, blah blah blah. I do books. If you ever want to do a book, let me know." Like, whatever. I'm not interested in that. I'm trying to like weld cookers every day, because we're struggling to
yeah.
keep up. And then one day, years later, many, many years later, I think, um, I was out here in the backyard wrapping ribs one morning and the sun was coming up and my espresso was sitting there, I'm like, man, maybe this place is getting under control a little bit. Maybe we should think about a book. So I called him later and he suggested Jordan McKay. And it's like, oh, yeah, sounds great. Never heard of the guy, never met him. And then, so Jordan grew up in Austin. He lives in New York now, but then he
Mhm.
was in the Bay Area. Um, so he was coming back to visit his family and he came by and he quickly reminded me that we had actually met before and hung out and had a beer and he interviewed me for a barbecue story in some magazine
Oh
which
yeah,
I
like a
don't
yes.
remember at all. Stuart Brioza was also there, and he also reminds me of this, like, yeah, we met in your backyard once. Like, was I there? I was so sleep deprived. The first so many years of this place was such a blur. But anyway, really hit it off with Jordan, and he wrote the book. We get along great. He's one of my best friends. I feel like he's like a member. He is a member of our family. He stays at our house all the time. We cross paths constantly, meet up in cities. If he's somewhere, I'll be like, oh, I'm on my way here. Let's meet up and hang out for a night. He is just the sweetest,
Great
kindest,
guy.
awesomest guy ever. And he's such a flippin' good writer. He has this crazy ability to actually write something out of the blue in my voice. Like he's so talented. Man, I love that guy to bits. He's
Yeah.
just flipping awesome.
Yeah, no, I was lucky enough. Aaron Fegis and I we haven't done in a while, like a wine and barbecue show, and we had him on to talk, and
Oh,
it
awesome.
was
Yeah, and he's a tall wine guy. That's really
such
his
a yeah, and the fact that he did stuff with Rajat Parr, who he's
thing.
like the wine, the
Yeah, he's got a
wine,
ton of books with Raj.
yeah, which is just crazy. Like it's just it was I was so curious as to how that ended up happening, and those books. Like, do you even have do you have a fourth book in your head? Is that something that
Oh no. Oh no, the trilogy is the trilogy.
trilogy? Yeah, you're George Lucas. You're just gonna end
Yeah.
it there.
Well, back to Jordan's wine thing. Well, that's why we call it a trilogy, because it's really a Star Wars reference. But that was the thing about Jordan is he's such a great wine person. He's such a great wine writer, and he didn't know really anything about barbecue, but the brains work in a very similar way.
Okay.
So the things that he's able to taste, and he's a great cook. And he was a cocktail writer in San Francisco for years. Like he's a food writer. He does all the stuff anyway. He just fit. He checked all the boxes so well.
Yeah, and it's interesting how the barbecue world mirrors the wine world, and how
Hmm.
when you start to put things away for wine, like you bottle wine, you don't know how it's going to be 3 years from now, and also with barbecue, sometimes you just don't know how it's going to turn out after until it does turn out. And how I'm going to jump to I want people to know about the Uptown Sports Club. How did that come about?
Yeah. So we accidentally opened another restaurant.
Yeah,
I don't know how you accidentally open a restaurant, but I managed to pull that off too, and Stacy's there as well. Um, yeah, so this really cool building has been in Austin since the late 1800s, and it's over on East 6th, on the corner of Waller and East 6th.
okay.
And when it was built, it was a butcher shop, it was an upholstery place, it was a bakery for a number of years, and it went through all the stuff. And in the 40s, it became like Uptown Club or Uptown Sports or Uptown Sports Club or Club Sports Uptown, some version of those three words. And it had kind of retained sort of that name from the late 40s up until the 90s. And throughout the 80s, it was a different place and different families kind of ran it and stuff. But it was kind of a pool hall, just bar, and they would do boxing matches in there and,
Really?
old school Austin stuff. So it had been vacant for about 30 something years, and I looked at it for Franklin because we were just looking for anything that might have been affordable, and a lot of people really drove by that place constantly looking at it and just trying to do something. And then maybe about 6 or so years ago, it a friend of mine, Moody, that I do hot luck with, and also Uptown, called up and he's like, "Hey, Uptown Sports Club?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And he had looked at it for the for Mohawk. He owns that place too
Oh, okay.
downtown. Um, it's like, yeah. So somebody called me the other day, and Ron Hernandez, the owner, is looking to kind of like get out of it, and some weird things happened, and I don't know the whole story and stuff. But anyway, it felt like it sort of fell into our laps, and it also felt like that if we didn't save it, and then it would just have gotten torn down.
Yeah.
And from your time in Austin, like you remember, like everything just gets torn down,
Yeah.
something new gets built up. It's got no personality. We're not doing a very good job of preserving our what little history we have.
Yeah, it's sad.
And we just don't really care about old buildings. And this place should have been torn down. It is falling apart. I mean, it was built in the 1800s. It's
Really?
terrible. And so we did so we ended up getting it really to save it. And then sitting there one day, it's got this cool corner entrance, and it's very New Orleans-y kind of feeling place. It only had dirt for floor, no floors, no plumbing, not hooked up to city sewage, just four walls and sort of a roof and a red fox that died. Um, and that's really all there was to work with. So, you know, Moody and I take over some lawn chairs, and I grab a couple beers, and we just are kind of sitting in there one summer afternoon. It's like, what should this be? It's like, sure feels like New Orleans. And he's actually from New Orleans. And I've been going there for years. And, my grandfather was from the side of a highway in southern Louisiana. So that's kind of what got me into cooking back in the day, and kind of like learning how to cook food. That's where most of my food stuff comes from. So we're kind of sitting in there. I was like, well, I've kind of had this pipe dream to do like a gumbo window, because gumbo's always kind of been my liquid brisket. And in my head, it's like a Looney Tunes thing. It's like one window, like Acme on the top of it, with just a little quart containers just going in and out. So that's what we did, and we thought it fit the building. It felt kind of balmy, really had a kind of a good energy, like real good light, once we opened up the windows and stuff, and kind of went to town. And then we ended up doing a full historical rehab on this place, which, if anyone's curious what a historical rehab looks like, it's very expensive.
I can imagine.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
We spent so much money on this place. Um, it's really cool. It's saved. It's, historically zoned up to the federal level, which is really cool. And that's special. But really, Uptown Sports Club was to save the building. But I will say, it's also my favorite restaurant. I eat there constantly, and I really love it. So once we got into the menu, man, so long-winded. Really sorry about
No,
this.
I
You're getting
love this. No,
all this
because I
stuff,
don't think a lot of people know. I don't know much about it, so this is
and
great.
I'm
Thank you.
just making it up. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's all. Yeah,
how you doing?
none of this is real, anyways.
Um,
Simulation. The simulation is fantastic. Thank you.
yeah, it's great. AI is going to be awesome. So we got this building. We start working on it. It took about 6 years before we got open. And in the
Wow.
meantime, it started off as like a gumbo window, full bar with just like a little window in the back with like just making burgers or something like that. And then somehow it shifted where it's almost more restaurant than bar. And I don't know how that happened. It was unintentional,
Hmm.
and it happened. But, somewhere along the way, it was like, okay, gumbo for sure, po' boys, sure. And the root of the po' boy is the hot roast beef. And that's a dish that I've been making forever, because that's what my grandparents made. And that was kind of like one of the first things I didn't really learn how to cook it. But I watched them cook it all the time. If it was like my birthday or something like that, my grandma would make a pot roast, because that was my favorite, with mashed potatoes and all that kind of stuff.
So
And
good.
so that po' boy is kind of based on that. Of course, it's super zhuzhed up, and now there's like veal stock and all kinds of stuff going on, and there's fried brisket in the roux and all these things going on. But that was kind of those were the two first dishes. And then from there, it kind of turned into a Texas brasserie situation because I wanted it to be an all-day place. And I love seafood. The barbecue guy really loves oysters and martinis. And we kind of, you know, when I travel, one of the first things I look for, I've got a set of travel things. It's like, okay, get to a city. Where's the oldest jazz club? Where's the oldest restaurant? And where's the coolest bar that has oysters and martinis? And like it's always like a
That's
big marble bar, like old school. Like I want old buildings. I love old stuff.
yeah,
I want the old hotel bar. I want to go in and get a seafood tower and just check some emails and just sit there. And I
that's
just
heaven.
love that stuff so much. And that's kind of what we built out of Uptown. So it's a full bar. It's a great bar. Yes, there are martinis by the plenty, but there's seafood towers, there's crudos, there's steak frites at night, there's redfish on a half shell, kind of a Louisiana thing. Um, there's some killer burgers. So it's
Wow.
really become kind of the neighborhood spot. And it really, I mean, the red beans and rice are kind of my go-to dish for daily snacking, and that is a vegan option.
So
It's
is
a
it so is it lunch and dinner?
Yeah, yeah, we're open lunch and dinner 7 days a week.
Wow. Okay.
And open till, like pretty late every night. Like on the weekends, we'll be open till 2 a.m.
So is that something? How far away is that from Franklin?
It's about a 12-minute walk or a 2-minute drive.
12-minute walk. That's a good way to look at it. Okay. And then can you talk about how Loro and it's interesting too how you have two Loros in three cities.
Oh, there are like five Loros, I think.
I thought there's
Uh,
two in Austin, two in Dallas, two in Houston. Am I wrong?
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Two per city. Yeah,
Two
you're
per
right.
city. Yeah. I
Um,
don't think I said that correctly.
I don't think the Houston one is open quite yet.
Maybe not. Okay. Five.
Um,
Okay.
well, so that spun off. That was an idea that the Uchi guy, the High Hospitality, had a long time ago. And when they opened Uchiko, I think also in '09, same year we opened our trailer,
Okay.
they started kind of toying around with this idea. And, some of the guys over there had reached out and be like, hey, we got this idea. And this is, gosh, probably like 11 or 12, I guess. They're like, hey, we're working on this like Asian smokehouse thing. We got this idea. We just don't know how to get there. Like, we need some help with the smoky stuff. I'm like, I'm pretty busy, but I'll let you pick my brain all you want. I'll tell you everything I know. I just don't have the bandwidth to mess with it. And I don't really want to. And then years went by and they kind of put it on the back burner. And then I was doing this dinner up in Dallas with a place called Top Ramen, Top Knot, and whatever it's called. It was one of those spots, and it was upstairs from Uchi, so it was like the casual thing. And they were doing these Monday night ramen dinners, and I'd done one, an Aaron ramen dinner up there, and
Uh,
we're kind of sitting around like, oh my God, this is insane. Like I'd done these little like gelatin brisket balls that melted in the ramen and
sounds so
stuff,
good.
and it was really good. And one of the high guys, uh, was like, hey, remember that smokehouse we've been talking about? I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And he was like, well, we're still really wanting to do that. It's like, hey, timing's great. Let's grab a coffee. So we did, and then I just kind of helped them get that thing started. And I am a partner. But they're just so good at restaurants. There is very little for me to actually do up there. Um, but I really love eating there. It's such a great restaurant.
The
It's so
menu
well
looks
done.
amazing. It's just
The food is so good. And I don't know, like the one here is so busy, and those guys just keep it just so consistent. It's really an excellent restaurant, but it's also super casual. And that was a little tricky when it opened because Uchi, for those that don't know, is kind of a nicer place in Austin, and people the first several weeks, maybe months actually, that Loro was open, people were pulling up and they were dressed really nice and stuff and getting out of, like really nice cars and Maseratis and stuff pulling up. Like it's like a counter service kind of a barbecue-y spot. And then it took a month or so before people kind of figured it out. But now it's totally just slammed all the time.
and they
It's
have
a
good outdoor space, right? Huge outdoor space. That's
huge patio, full bar, frozen gin and tonics. I don't know how many menus are on or how many items are on the menu over there, but gosh, it's probably got 30 things on the
yeah,
menu. It's a really big menu, and they execute with such perfection every single day.
and lots of vegan and vegetarian items, and it's just
Tons of it,
the
tons of
awesomeness.
it.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's just it's a cool concept, and I was wondering just how that was born, just because I had no idea. And then I'd be remiss to say you can order ahead for people that don't want to wait in the line for some reason. You can because you mentioned in the tour is it 5 pounds of meat ahead of
Yep,
time?
yep.
Okay,
Yeah, you can order on our website, and you can pick up at this trailer that I'm looking at right
you
now.
close by it?
Uh-huh. It's right there.
Okay, but it's not near
They
the
don't let me
trailer.
out of the dungeon very often. I kind of I have to stick around.
And is it and is it true that one trailer would give you hallucinations from the electrical currents and stuff? Was that
Oh yeah, that trailer shocked me once.
really?
No, we had a guy. It was really not that interesting of a story. Um,
Okay, never
we
mind.
had a guy, a maintenance guy, and there's an electric hot water heater in there, and it's 220, and it had gone out, and for some reason he had, put wire nuts on the wires, so we would have assumed. And I moved a table over, and it was a stainless steel work table, and it touched the wires, and it was touching one table with
Oh
one hand,
boy.
and it was touching this table. It's like, ugh. I've been shocked a few times.
Yeah.
That
Getting
one,
electrocuted is the worst. It's the weirdest feeling.
but
My dad got blown across. So my dad was like you. He could tinker. We'd have to have work done in our house. And then after the guys would leave, he'd make it to code. Like he'd do it, he'd redo it at night. But he also one time
my people,
he did blow himself about across the room one time, got electrocuted and blew
geez,
himself. Like, yeah,
well, they
he's
got lucky. That's some pretty scary
that's
stuff.
scary stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to deal with high voltage, low amperage.
I agree. No, I agree completely. I wanted to maybe kind of do some like little bullet things. Favorite old school barbecue joint is I know that Louis Miller was your epiphany kind of barbecue spot, but what's your favorite?
Yeah.
If you had a choice to go to one as an old school spot.
Oh man, I'm like the lamest barbecue guy ever. I don't really get out much.
Okay.
I really spend most of my time here at the restaurant. And if I do get out for food, it's probably not
Not
barbecue I'm
barbecue.
looking
Okay.
for. Usually fish or salads.
So,
Um,
so let's do
super
that.
lame.
Let's try that. What's your favorite not barbecue restaurant or a couple favorite ones that you could recommend in the Austin area or
Yeah. I really I love Este up on Manor Road. That's a interior Mexican. It's from the Suerte guys, and
oh,
Suerte's on Sixth. But Este is like the more seafood heavy spot. So ceviches, crudos, oysters, margaritas. Duh. That place is really, really great. I really love Uptown. I eat there all the time, and maybe it's just a crudo, maybe it's just slurping a couple oysters for a snack. But that place is one of my favorites. Kanji over here on Sixth is excellent.
oh.
That's kind of a Caribbean-ish kind of place, but it's got like jerk chicken. Really, the food is so thoughtful, and the chefs over there are so amazing. That's a great spot, and it's walking distance too, so I like that. We go to Fonda San Miguel. That's my old school throwback.
Oh.
That's in a kind of off of Hancock and Shoal Creek-ish in Austin, and that's an old school Mexican place. But I think that's the best ceviche in town. There's a theme here:
Yeah, there's a theme.
cold fish. Anything that's not smoky, overly salted, fatty red meat.
What about breakfast tacos? Do you have a favorite breakfast taco place?
Yeah, breakfast tacos. My favorite, and I think the best Tex-Mex place in Austin is El Dorado. And I like it for dinner, I like it for lunch, but their breakfast tacos are also some of the best in town. That place is amazing, super great ingredients, painfully consistent. It's just so, so well done. For breakfast tacos, I like Primo. That's a trailer down on South First,
Okay.
which you would have been right around the corner from where you were hanging out.
I think I've been to that.
Yeah, it's in the parking lot of a coffee shop called Once Over.
Hmm.
That's a great spot. And yep, the guy working it is named Primo for sure. Doesn't write anything
It's a
down.
little
Just
white. Is it white? Like a little white?
yeah, it's like a little white trailer.
Mhm.
It's all white. Um, but
Did you say it's all white? I think
it's
it's
all
all white.
white. And this mustache, it's making my
It's
dad even worse than usual. And man, Granny's up the street is really good. Las Trancas or La Trancas, whatever it's called, over at Cedar Chavez is good. There's
okay.
just
Yeah.
insane. Oh, and of course Joe's Bakery. I mean, old school throwback.
Is that on East First?
It's on Seventh.
Seven.
They opened in the '60s. A fella named Joe, and it's really good. It hadn't changed a lick. I mean, it's so old school. Love that spot. I think they got a Beard Award last year, maybe for American Classic.
Really? What's the
Pretty
place
fun.
in on East First then that's kind of I would think it's south of where John's trailer was on East First, but it's like a bakery slash Mexican restaurant.
Oh, R.I.P. La Mexicana.
Oh, it's gone.
That was a great spot. They had the best tres leches in town.
Yeah.
Man, I used to hit that place real hard. I super miss that restaurant. I
Yeah.
also really miss LS Teca. I don't know if they were here when you were around, but they were over on East 7th.
I don't
And
think
Dark
so.
Hole. God, there's so many great spots that have closed.
That's sad. I know there's lots of restaurants that have closed. Do you have a favorite local brewery that's popped up or has been
I
there?
do,
You
but you
do?
never. Live Oak is Old Faithful. They've been here. They're kind of the first, microbrewery, you know, but they're great. They've been just getting better for the last 25, 28 years or whatever. Meanwhile Brewery is a great, great spot. They're down south, uh, south of Ben White, east of I-35. They're making great beers. Like Uptown just did a pop-up with them. They're doing a monthly tap takeover up in Portland, hence the stash. Um, and Uptown did a pop-up up in Portland last weekend with Meanwhile. So Meanwhile's great, great people, excellent beers. ABGB is still really, really excellent for Pilsners. Austin's kind of a Pilsner spot.
Okay.
Clean and crispy German and Czech Pilsners. Yeah, yeah. I think that's about it.
That makes
There's some
sense.
good beers. There's also Zilker's got a really good light and crispy beer. I would say Meanwhile and Live Oak
Okay.
are my two faves.
All right, cool. And then mu music wise, do you still play bass?
I actually am not much of a bass player. I played bass for a
Oh,
brief
it's just
stint
okay.
with a band that needed a bass player. And a friend called up that was a bass player, like, hey, these guys asked me to go on a tour with them. You're a drummer. You want to do it? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And that was why that stuff was in the book, because that's what I was doing when I started
Okay.
doing backyard barbecues.
Gotcha. Okay.
I play guitar in a band now. They shall remain nameless, because I don't like to cross the work and fun streams too much.
No, it's not smart.
Um, but it's loud, loud rock, kind of akin to late 80s, early 90s, DC, kind of hardcore, kind of like Discord kind of stuff. Lots of San Diego scene, kind of like, like kind of Pacific, West Coast, I guess, like kind of Wipers, Hot Snakesy, kind of stuff like that. And a good hand bit of classic rock in there too. So I play guitar in that band.
Okay.
Have been doing that since 17, I guess. But way before barbecue, I mostly played drums.
Okay.
And that's what I like really like when I toured a bunch, and the band that I quit to start working towards opening up a barbecue place and spend more time with Stacy, I was playing drums in. And I'd
Okay.
been a drummer forever. Even though I started playing guitar when I was probably in junior high. I've been playing guitar for longer, but I've played a lot more drums in bands.
So can you recommend some good music then? Some music that you're listening to right now? What's on your what do you listen to? Use a
Man, I listen to some
wild
pretty
stuff?
it's really not, but it's so far out of the mainstream.
Okay.
Um, I don't know. Let me look on my phone and see. Well, right now, Blizzard of Oz was what was playing in the truck.
Wizard of Oz.
So there's some Ozzy. That's not what I play. Um, this is all new wave British metal. Yeah,
I like new wave British metal. It was fun.
it's having a real resurgence now
Is it?
too.
Oh,
There's some great bands out there. Yeah, just kind of like I guess the stuff I listen to would be like kind of Discord, good bit of SST, you know, I don't know, just like the kind of bands that would play at a club that can probably only fit 200 people.
okay. Yeah, yeah. So
Completely unlistenable for the general public.
that's perfect, and ones that I won't be able to find to put links to because
You'd
it'll be
never find them. You'd have to go on Bandcamp.
exactly. All right, cool. Was there anything else that people don't know about you? Because this has been about an hour, and I like to keep this around an hour. Is there anything that you would like to, or you want people to know? And what's your, so are you a Star Wars guy as opposed to a Star Trek guy?
I'm kind of neither.
Okay.
I appreciate both.
I appreciate, I'm a Star Wars guy, but I appreciate Star Trek, but I'm a,
Yeah, I would lean more on Star Wars than Star Trek. Um, but I also don't really have the time to watch movies. And I watched all those as a kid, of course.
yeah, I know. It's
But
hard. It's
I'm
takes,
just so darn busy,
yeah.
with like kid stuff going on, family things. this restaurant, which, takes a lot of time, the other restaurant, which takes a lot of time, all the other work things going on.
Well, if you
Um,
get a chance, watch Andor. It is
oh, I heard it's really great.
so great. It is really well done, and it's like slow. It meanders in the proper way, like the way, and it's not heavy
Just
handed.
like
It's
my mind. That's
just
great.
like mine too. It's perfect for us. It's like for our age group, but there's two seasons. It's worth it. You can watch it over 17 years, but it's really I'd
Okay,
recommend.
I'm gonna download. I've got a lot of travels coming up later this week,
Yeah,
uh,
it's
and I
give it a
will
shot. Like
totally
it
download that.
predates A New Hope. It's the prequel to Rogue One. If you ever saw Rogue One, did you
Yeah,
see
yeah,
it?
yeah. I
Yeah,
did.
yeah. So it kind
Very
of
cool.
builds up to that. Yeah, it's real, and the acting's really well done. Tony Gilroy is a great director. Anyways, thank you so much again for taking the time.
Oh, heck yeah, man! Great
I
talking to
love
you.
talking to you. Yeah, maybe in a year from now we'll chat again. But all right. Well, no, have a great day. Say hi to Stacy, and
Hey, will do.
yeah, it was great talking to you.
Good talking to you.
All
Check
right,
you later.
bye.